So let's talk about what makes a good work plan. What are some of the pitfalls that people fall into when documenting? And what are some good techniques, things to do and not to do? So I built this just as a way of demonstrating things not to do and a few things to do. So this is something I see quite commonly, this first task. So when people, some types of writers document, they're thinking of something in a story. They're thinking of a vision of what's happening. And they'll write the task like they're writing a novel. And it goes sentence after sentence typically. It's generally full of a lot of extra adjectives and verbs. It's explaining it in writing style. And this doesn't make for good documentation, because when I'm looking at this, it's like, whoa, what is this? It's a lot. And if I try to read it and then I try to perform the steps that it's trying to illustrate, it's very hard. So when you see content like this, break it up into more of an outline, more of a step-by-step. So one of the things you can do with these run-on sentences, it says, gather the following information in order to have the information you need to address their issues. So this is kind of overkill here. I'm gathering information in order to have the information. That's somebody telling the story. So you probably don't need, that said twice. So gather the following information you need. So I can delete that. Then this is saying gather something, collect something. So that my mind immediately goes to bullet points, right? Like, what are the things I'm collecting? So I can go here and hit enter and then use the bullet, and every place that I see a comma, then I bullet point that out. Once you've gone through this, you can even go and try to clean this up a little more. So this is gathering the following information you need to address their issues. Ask for, you probably don't need to say ask for, you could just say a list, right? Client's name and phone number, location, so I can get rid of the ands. So it's not very difficult to go in and take documentation that's been written like this and kind of turn it around. Another thing to look for is if more than one thing is happening in this work plan. In other words, are there multiple tasks within this? Because that's another pitfall that people fall into. They start telling a story and then the story just continues and you're not really paying attention to, did that end? Am I starting something else? So like this is, we're still asking for things. We're asking these things from the customer that we're gathering. And now it's onto a whole nother thing. It says necessary to help you address the situation. Okay. Then locate their invoice. Okay. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not gathering information anymore. So I'd pull this out, just cut it, and we'll save this. Then go down to the bottom, add a task. I already have one added here. Then I'm just going to paste this into the task. The next task, I hit save. Then I'm going to take this and drag it up and make it number 2. So now it's starting to look a little better, right? Because my eye is going to gather these things and then boom, boom, boom. This is what I'm trying to get. Now I'm going to locate their invoice. This is how I do that, which is also not written very well. So if you can't, this is an if-then, which happens in tasks. So I'm supposed to locate the invoice. If I can't find it, then what do I do? So think about that kind of writing technique and be very clear with the if then. So this says locate their invoice. If you can't find the invoice using their name, ask questions to determine their job. Like ask the customer what date it was. So you see how this is continuing to be like this story that it's telling. And my mind's trying to absorb it all. But if I'm thinking, what's the first thing I do? So this also could be broken down into probably bullet points. And the language could also be kind of made more precise or cleaned up a little bit. When you see something in writing that says, ask the customer this, or pick up the phone and call them, or ask questions to determine something, The ask makes me think script, right? So the script template, we're going to go over more details of that next week, but over here is the scripting template. So if I'm ever asking something, not all the time, but typically a script would work nicely for that. So this says locate their invoice, and I'm asking questions in order to locate their invoice. So I might then decide to have a invoice script like this one. So in the script, you have prompts and you have the words that are spoken. So this says, ask the customer for their name in order to locate their invoice. If you can't find the invoice using their name. So I just took this whole sentence and pasted it into the prompt, speak clearly and calmly. And then the script is your job name under someone else's name? So you're putting in like, what are the ways that you do that? How do you ask them the questions? And then when you're saying things like speak clearly and calmly, you can even put like little techniques in for how to do that. Like, boy, I can't find that under your name. Do you have the invoice number? Then you can even go on from there. So now this door of this script is opened, and we're not just doing tasks right now. Now we're getting kind of creative in how to ask things and how to articulate things, which is very important in a customer complaint process. So here this is, if they start to get agitated, explain why. I'm sorry, let's try another way. Or yeah, that's so hard. I lose stuff all the time. Or no worries, just take as long as time as you need. If someone's speaking to an agitated person that way, you're immediately going to feel calm. So again, this is all for training purposes. You can even then do an audio down here. So the work plan itself, that task, has led us to all these other creative, cool things that we could build into this process in order to, make it something that it really teaches. So this audio down here could be a role play that you're doing with someone to practice, me getting agitated and then you like calming me down with this script. You can even do examples of what not to do, like why to not sound or say things a certain way, because when they hear it, then they understand why that's not a good way to speak. Okay, so let's go back here. If you do decide to create a script, you can then go like, at the beginning of this, you can say, use invoice script. Or maybe even at the end it would go. Then you highlight this, and then we're going to create a link to this script. So you go to the hyperlink tool, hit the drop down. I'm looking for a script, right? So I'm choosing script. And then here, I'm looking for the invoice script. If I type in the first letter of what I'm looking for, I go right to it, invoice script, insert link, and save. So now when I click this, it's going to take me right to this script. So this is another example of how the work plan's kind of setting the stage for the whole process. It's giving the details, and then it's pointing to the other tools that I could potentially use to document the process even better. This is something I commonly see. This is an example of not enough detail. So this says, determine whether this is a warranty issue. And I'm capitalizing determine just to like make my point that you need to determine. This is something that is a personal preference. This is another example of that. If this is not a warranty issue, so I'm bolding this because that's important to me, or down here I'm saying, this is a warranty issue, and I'll underline it and bullet and sometimes make it red. So this is all a way of like making that word feel important to the person reading it, but it's really my own personal writing style. Like not another person may choose not to do that. So the danger of allowing your employees to do this or for you to do it is that your documentation is going to look different based on who wrote it. And that's one of the things that TouchStone solves, because it's forcing everybody into a template that they're following and using. If you then allow these personal preferences to creep in, then you're kind of diminishing the benefit of TouchStone. Or you may not care, which is also fine. So back to the idea of detail. something that I commonly see in work plans is not enough detail. It's basically, I'm reading something and it doesn't give me enough information to know how to do that. Like, how do I determine if this is a warranty issue? So it could be as simple as putting in 4 or 5 bullet points there, which explain how you determine if it's a warranty issue. A way to tell if the documentation is detailed enough is to think about the minimum competency level of that employee who's going to be doing this work. So the best way to determine that is to think about your hiring process, which you should have. And in the hiring process, it screens out people that don't have the qualifications that you're looking for. So you decide, what are the qualifications of a good customer support person? Do they have to have a college degree? Should they have an AA degree? Is no college necessary? Do they have to have 2 years of customer service experience in another industry? Do they have to know Microsoft Word products? Do they have to know how to use the internet? So you determine all these things, and then you screen out people who don't have those qualifications based on what you've decided. And so then I know what the minimum competency level is for this process, the minimum qualifications. I already have that in my mind, and I've already decided that this person has to have an AA degree, which really just shows you that they know how to learn, like they've learned in a traditional environment enough to be granted that degree. They have to have Microsoft Word skills. Then I write the work plan from that point forward. So I don't have to explain how to use Word, how to open up a website. I can assume a certain amount of logic and some basic understanding because they have proven that they can get a college degree. So think about the minimum competency and build the work plan from that point forward. Another extreme example is like if you're a doctor's office, say, or you're a law firm, you're hiring paralegals or doctors to work in your firm or practice. I don't have to write processes to teach someone how to be a doctor. Like, I'm hiring them, they already know how to be a doctor or an attorney, but I write it from that point forward. So I'm going to assume that they understand certain things because that's their minimum competency. And then I got to put in all the details there forward. There's another technique related to this that I learned at eMyth from Michael Gerber himself. And he used to say, and people didn't like this a lot of the time, but he said that employees can be replaceable because you can create documentation that makes them makes your business not dependent on that person. So he said it in a harsher way than that, but he didn't mean, that people aren't valuable. All he was trying to say is, if you have really great processes, you can hire someone who has less qualifications or skills or competency, and the process will teach them. The process will teach them. So you could hire a minimum wage employee and train them how to do something that that normally requires a college degree if your processes are good enough, if your systems are good enough. What else? So here's another example of some hyperlinks. Like, this is use the providing a solution script, fill out the customer complaint form. If you have a policy, so this is the warranty and guarantee policy, which is over here. Another quick example, if you have a task which needs to reference another process, so this says log into the CRM and go to the customer screen. So that's pretty straightforward based on minimum qualifications. Maybe it's not necessary to say more than that, but if you did want to, you could highlight this log into the CRM, and there should theoretically be a process on how to use the CRM. So down here, I can scroll down. Here's that CRM how-tos. So even if I didn't know if there was a process for this or not, I could search for it and see if there is. Then I hit insert link. If there's not, maybe I need to go and build one and then link it. And then I hit save. So the idea about this is in every process where we have to log into the CRM, I don't want to have to explain how to do that in every single process where someone needs to do that. And I realize this is a simple example, but they do get more complex. So if you have actions, steps, tasks that are used in the same way inside of multiple processes, well, then build a process for that and just hyperlink to it. Then if someone ever forgets, they could go right here and know how to do it. Down below the tasks, this is the expectations section. So expectations are typically not actions. They're timing, they're why something is important, they're qualities, they're subjective things. Sometimes they're going the extra mile, like how, what would I have to do to make this even better or to make it higher quality? Sometimes it's the difference between someone who really cares about what they're doing and someone who's just trying to get it done. So think about, does your work plan have any expectations? If you build an expectation and you put it in as a task, like this one, seek to problem solve for them. You could just fix the issue and be on your way, but be creative. So this is just like a good thing to know, but it's not a task. So I just take it and drag it down to the expectations field because it's more just things you need to know. You can do hyperlinks. So this is be mindful of the customer satisfaction guidelines, which is actually a document inside of this process. So you can make hyperlinks inside the expectations. If there are no expectations, then you can leave this field blank. Another thing to be mindful of here is that you can use expectations for the reasons why. So explaining the context behind why something is important is really helpful for training purposes. So if I use the expectation to say why filling out the form is so important or why doing it within 24 hours is important, then that just helps the employee understand, why they're doing something.